Every morning starts the same. I wake up in my own bed and forget for a moment that I am no longer the owner of my house. Then reality hits, and I remember that I'm now living here on a bird's license. My name is Walden Northwood. Last month I turned 72 years old. For more than 30 years I worked as a forensic handwriting analyst for the Amherst Police Department, studying document forgeries, matching signatures, and helping to solve frauds. I have now been retired for almost 10 years, and my life has evolved into something quite different than I expected at the end of my years. Today at breakfast, I again failed to find my favorite mug, the one with the faded inscription, "To the best husband," and a drawing of a forest lake that Beatrice gave me for our 20th wedding anniversary. "Delilah, have you seen my blue mug?" I asked, opening the kitchen cabinets one by one. My sister-in-law, not taking her eyes off the phone, shrugged. "Oh, that old thing? I think I moved it somewhere. Take any other one, we have plenty of them." We have. How easily she uses that word in a house I built long before she came into the family. A house where every floorboard, every doorknob holds the memories of a life lived with Beatrice. "This mug has meaning to me," I tried to speak calmly, though I was seething inside. "I'd like my things to stay where they are." "Jesus, Walden." She finally pulled away from the phone and looked at me with that condescending smile I hated so much. "You can't cling to every little thing. At your age, it's time to let go. My age. As if being 72 automatically makes one helpless and disenfranchised. Beatrice died 4 years ago of heart failure. For 18 months I lived alone, coping with grief and gradually adjusting to my new life. I learned to cook for myself, keep the house in order, even mastered laundry and ironing. All the things Beatrice used to do while I was busy working. At the time, my son River and his wife Delilah lived in Northampton, 20 minutes away. They visited me on Sundays, sometimes staying for dinner. Everything changed when River lost his job as a programmer at a local firm. Projects had ended, the company was downsizing, and he was among those laid off. That's when he had an idea that seemed reasonable. Why don't they move in with me? There would be plenty of room in the house. They wouldn't have to pay rent, and I would get company and help with the household chores. I suggested it myself, of my own free will. How bitter to realize now that I had destroyed my peace with my own hands. 2.5 years had passed since they'd moved. River has found a new job, now remote, and spends hours in his office, the former guest bedroom I once promised to turn into a workshop for my carpentry hobbies. Delilah continues to work for a pharmaceutical company, representing the firm's interests in research clinics. They occupy the master bedroom, the one that used to belong to Beatrice and me. I've moved into the small room next to the bathroom that we once planned to make into a nursery for the second child who was never born. After lunch, I decided to go out into the garden, the only place I still felt like a master. Beatrice loved flowers, especially roses. We had a whole rose garden along the south wall of the house. Since her death, I continue to tend those bushes, talking to them as she once did. Sometimes I think Beatrice can hear me when I'm here. I was pruning the wilted buds on a tea rose when I heard the sound of the door opening. "Walden," Delilah's voice sounded unusually friendly. "What are you doing here? It's so hot today. It's not good for you to be out in the sun." I looked up at the sky. It was a normal spring day, the sun barely breaking through the clouds. "I'm not hot," I replied. "I'm just tending Beatrice's roses." "You're at it again," her tone changed to irritated. "We've talked about this. Hiring a gardener would be much easier. You could fall or overexert yourself, in your condition." "What condition?" I straightened up, feeling my back muscles tense up. "I feel fine." "Of course you do," she dismissed me. "It's just that yesterday you forgot to turn off the gas, and the day before that you couldn't find your glasses, even though they were on your head. That's normal at your age, but—" I didn't continue the argument. It was useless. Yes, I happen to forget little things, but who doesn't? Delilah skillfully uses every such incident, exaggerating their significance, and convincing Rivera that there's something wrong with me. I'd noticed this tactic about 6 months ago, but for a long time I couldn't believe she was doing it intentionally. That evening I sat in my chair in the corner of the living room, the only piece of furniture Delilah hadn't been able to modernize. Too old, too shabby, it didn't fit her vision of a modern interior. But I insisted. That's the chair Beatrice died in while reading her favorite Jane Austen book. I couldn't part with it. River came home from work, that is. He came out of his office and plopped down on the couch next to me. "How was your day, Dad?" "The usual," I answered. "I read, worked in the garden." "Mom called," he said suddenly, and I tensed. River often called Delilah Mom in my presence, as if erasing the memory of Beatrice, his real mother. And what had said, Delilah? I used her name deliberately. She's worried you're spending too much time alone. She says you forgot to take your meds again this morning. I didn't. I deliberately don't take those vitamins she forces on me without explaining what they are. When I tried to read the composition on the package, she said it was a special formula developed in their company specifically for the elderly. I don't trust her enough to take something without an explanation. I'm fine, River, and I don't need constant supervision. Dad, he sighed, no one's talking about supervision, but you're not young anymore, and Delilah and I just want to make sure you're safe. Safe. What a convenient word for restricting my freedom. Last month they took away my car keys, saying it wasn't safe for me to drive. And I've never been in an accident, never even gotten a speeding ticket. River left, and I continued to sit there, staring out the window at the thickening dusk. There were pictures on the mantelpiece. The wedding portraits of Beatrice and me had once taken center stage, but were now pushed to the edge by the many shots of River and Delilah, their wedding, their vacation in Hawaii, their Christmas dinner with friends. It was as if life had only begun with their arrival. Beatrice would never let that happen. She was soft, but she had a backbone inside. She knew how to insist on her point without raising her voice. Peace in the family is built on respect, she used to say. There was no respect for me in our house now. When I went to bed, the light in the room was unusually bright. Delilah had replaced my old lamp with a new one with a daylight spectrum. It'll make it easier for you to read, she said, though I wasn't complaining about the lighting. Trying to fall asleep under that hospital light, I stared at the picture of Beatrice on my bedside table. The only picture left in my room. In it, she's 55. We're on vacation on the coast of Maine. Her hair, already touched with gray, flutters in the wind, and her eyes glow with the same warmth they did when we met in our 20s. What would you do, Bea? I mentally asked. How would you handle it? I could almost hear her answer. Don't let them take what's yours, Walden. Not your home, not your dignity. As I fell asleep, I thought back to our life before everything changed. How we used to make breakfast together on Sundays. How we read aloud to each other in the evenings. How we planned a trip to Europe for our golden wedding anniversary. A trip that wasn't meant to be. The contrast between then and now was too painful to bear. I closed my eyes, hoping that at least in my dreams I would see our home as it used to be, a place where I felt loved and needed, not a stranger interfering with someone else's happiness. Amherst Park was always sparsely populated on Tuesdays. Perhaps that was why I'd chosen that day to meet Lydia. We agreed to see each other at the old bronze dolphin fountain that had been installed back in the 70s, when we were both just beginning our careers. Lydia Pratt was 15 minutes late, a typical habit of hers. In the 30 years of our friendship, she had never been on time. I noticed her from a distance. Even at 70, she retained her impetuous gait and flamboyant style. Her red hair, now dyed, of course, remained her trademark, as did her loud, slightly husky voice. Walden, you old fox. She plopped down beside me on the bench and kissed me on the cheek. Sorry I'm late. It's been a madhouse at the newsroom. We're doing a special report on corruption in the city council. I smiled. Lydia had never changed. She retired as a reporter 3 years ago, but couldn't stay at home and came back as a producer at the same channel where she'd worked all her life. As usual, digging up the dirty secrets of our quiet town? You bet, she winked. Somebody has to make sure that those in power don't dig around. We talked about the news of the town, about old acquaintances. Lydia told me about her granddaughter, who had entered college to study journalism. I listened, smiled, but inside I was growing restlessness, which led me to this meeting. Stop beating around the bush, Walden, Lydia said suddenly, interrupting her story. I know you too well. Something's happened. Spit it out. I sighed. Lydia always saw through people, the professional deformity of a reporter. At home, it's complicated, I began. You know River and his wife have been living with me for over 2 years. I know, and I never understood why you let them in. She shook her head. Especially that Delilah. Remember when I met her at Beatrice's funeral? She looked at your house like a wolf at a rabbit farm. Now I see you were right, I shivered, though the day was warm. They, mostly Delilah, of course, are slowly pushing me into the background, in my own house. Lydia listened intently, not interrupting as I talked about all the little and big changes that had happened since they moved in, about moving my things without asking permission, about how Delilah found an excuse to take my car keys, about the vitamins she makes me take. She keeps insinuating to River that I'm getting forgetful, I continued, exaggerating every time I can't find something right away or forget some little thing. Classic tactic, Lydia nodded. I did a report on fraudsters who use such techniques to gain control over the property of the elderly. They start small, like car keys or health concerns, and end up with total control. Exactly. I was relieved that someone understood my concerns. The last 2 months have gotten worse. Delilah has started answering for me when friends call. She says I'm on vacation or not feeling well. And last week I found out she canceled my meeting with Pearson, my old colleague from the crime lab. Told him I was having a bad day and memory problems. She's isolating you, Lydia's eyes narrowed, taking out potential witnesses who could confirm that you were okay. I nodded. It was exactly the kind of suspicion that had been gnawing at me for the past few weeks. River's always been gullible, I continued. He believes everything she says, and I'm his father, but now he looks at me like I'm a child to be taken care of. Lydia put her hand on my shoulder. Have you talked to him? Asked him directly what they were planning? I've tried, but when I start this conversation, he gets irritable. He says I should be grateful for their concern. Typical manipulation, Lydia snorted. Walden, you have to be very careful. Your sister-in-law is obviously up to something. I know she is. But what can I do? For starters, the papers. Keep all important documents, house, bank accounts, will, in a safe place, not at home. That's not a problem. I've been keeping everything important in a safety deposit box for years. It's an old CSI habit, always making sure the evidence is safe. Okay, Lydia nodded. And start documenting everything that happens. Write down every time they try to control or isolate you. Dates, circumstances, witnesses if there are any. It could come in handy if things escalate. We talked for almost another hour. Lydia always knew how to listen, ask the right questions, and give practical advice. When we said goodbye, she gave me a big hug. Hang in there, old friend. And remember, my phone is always on. If you feel the situation is getting dangerous, call immediately, at any time of the day or night. Returning home, I felt a little calmer. Talking to Lydia had confirmed my fears, but it had also given me hope. At least I knew I wasn't crazy or making up problems out of nothing. As I approached the house, I noticed an unfamiliar car in the driveway, a silver Lexus with the license plates of a local real estate agency, Amherst Premium. Odd. We hadn't scheduled any repairs or property appraisals. Instead of entering through the front door, I walked around the house to the back patio. The glass doors were ajar, and I heard voices from the living room. Of course, given the current state of the market and location, I'd estimate the property at around $600,000, a male voice said. The house is in excellent condition. The grounds are well maintained. It will sell quickly, especially if you don't inflate the price. We're in no hurry, Delilah said. The main thing is to get as much money as possible. We're going to get the house anyway, so... I froze, not believing my ears. Get it? What is she talking about? I never promised to leave the house to River, let alone Delilah. My will specifies that the property is to be sold and the money distributed to River and several charitable organizations that Beatrice supported. Of course, the man continued. But the market is at its peak right now. I wouldn't recommend dragging it out too long. Let's go take a look at the top floor and the basement. I quickly retreated around the corner of the house and hid behind a large rhododendron bush. A minute later, Delilah and the man in the business suit walked out into the backyard. The grounds are fantastic, the man noted. How much land is there? Almost an acre, Delilah replied. My father-in-law is an obsessive gardener, so it's in perfect condition. Though, of course, it all requires maintenance, which becomes problematic given his age. They walked around the garden and back into the house through the side door. I waited a few minutes and only then went in through the main entrance, trying not to make any noise. In the hallway, I heard their voices from upstairs. They were looking around the bedrooms. Going upstairs, I ran into them in the hallway. Delilah froze for a moment, clearly not expecting to see me, but quickly pulled herself together. Oh, Walden, you're back already. This is Mr. Page from Amherst Premium. The man held out his hand to me. Bram Page, real estate agent. You have a beautiful home, Mr. Northwood. I shook his hand, trying to keep a calm expression on my face. Thank you. May I ask the purpose of your visit? Delilah quickly interjected. Mr. Page is doing an appraisal for the insurance company. Her eyes darted to the side for a moment. River wants to renew our home insurance. False. We recently had an appraisal for insurance, and it was done by a completely different person. Besides, River's never handled the house insurance all this time. I've been paying all the bills myself, including the insurance. Really? I tried to keep my voice neutral. It's interesting that River didn't mention it. He wanted to surprise you. Delilah smiled her fake smile. You know, save you the trouble. I nodded, pretending to believe it. Sure. Well, I won't get in the way. I'll be in my room if you need my opinion on anything. I spent the rest of the day thinking about what I'd heard. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fall into place. Delilah was actively setting the stage for something. She was gradually removing me from her own life. First my car, then my social contacts. She was systematically creating the image of a helpless old man with a fading mind. And now she was planning something with the house. That evening, when River returned from work, I tried to find out indirectly if he knew about the real estate agent's visit. During dinner, I asked him casually, "Son, have you thought about renewing your home insurance? I don't think it's been reviewed in a while." River looked at me in surprise. "No, I haven't. Is there something wrong with it?" I noticed Delilah tense up. No, there's nothing wrong," she said quickly. "Your father's just worried, like always. I already told him we'll take care of everything." River nodded, taking her words at face value. He rarely questioned what Delilah said. After dinner, I decided to check my mail not on the computer, but physically. I used to check my mailbox every day, but about a month ago, Delilah volunteered to do it for me. "You don't need to go out in this weather," she said then, even though the day was perfectly clear. When I opened the box, I was surprised to find several emails dated last week. Among them was an invitation to a reunion at the police academy where I taught after retirement. The reunion was 3 days ago. I had never received that invitation. In that moment, I was finally convinced. Delilah was purposefully cutting me off from the outside world, isolating me from friends and coworkers who might notice that I'm actually okay. Creates an image of a fading old man to justify any action she takes in the future. Looking at my son, absorbed in the television and oblivious to anything around him, I realized I couldn't count on him to help me. River was completely under the influence of his wife. I had to fight alone. I remembered Lydia's words. Document everything. Back in my room, I pulled an old leather-bound notebook from a hiding place in my closet. I used to use these at work to record observations on forgery cases. Tuesday, April 18th, I wrote. Delilah met with real estate agent Bram Page of the Amherst Premium Agency. They discussed the sale of a house for $600,000. Delilah said the house would go either way for them. I wrote down in detail everything I'd seen and heard over the past few days, including intercepted emails and canceled appointments. By the time I finished, it was past midnight. I put the notebook back in its hiding place and went to bed, but I couldn't sleep for a long time. Something was coming, something big, and I had to be ready. Outside the window, the rain was drizzling, a fine, nasty spring rain. I sat in my room, rereading Beatrice's old letters, the few that had survived from my travels. It's amazing how paper can hold a person's scent for decades. I could have sworn I smelled the faint scent of her perfume, a mixture of lavender and something citrusy, though my mind knew it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. The front door slammed downstairs. River had left for some work-related meeting and wouldn't be back until the evening. Delilah had promised to be late, too, something about a quarterly report and a client meeting. So the sound of the door opening in the middle of the day surprised me. I walked down the hall and saw Delilah shaking raindrops out of her hair. "You're early," I remarked. "Something wrong?" "I just came by to pick up some papers." She didn't even look at me as she rummaged through her purse. "I left some important papers on the desk. I didn't realize you'd be home. Aren't you supposed to be at your book club meeting?" I frowned. Book club met on Thursdays, and today was Wednesday. Besides, I wasn't planning on going anywhere at all. In fact, Delilah knew it. We discussed at breakfast that I was staying home because of the rain. "It's Wednesday," I reminded her. "The club is tomorrow." "Oh, right," she dismissed it. "I keep getting confused by your schedule." Delilah walked quickly into the kitchen, and I could hear her opening and closing drawers. Then she went upstairs to her and Reaver's bedroom. I stayed in the living room, pretending to be engrossed in my book. Something in her demeanor alarmed me. The hurry, the nervousness, the false explanations. 15 minutes later, Delilah came downstairs with a thick file folder. As she passed me, she stopped suddenly. "Walden, I think we have something important to discuss tonight." With River, her tone was too deliberately casual. "A family council, so to speak." "About what?" "The future," she answered evasively. "About how we can all live more, comfortably." She smiled, the same smile I'd learned to recognize as a sign of impending danger, and left without waiting for an answer. I sat in the living room for almost an hour, pondering her words. Family advice about the future, about comfort. What would that mean? Given the recent visit from the real estate agent and all the weirdness of the last few months, I had a very bad feeling. Determined to clear the air, I went upstairs to his and River's bedroom. Normally, I avoided going in there. It was their territory, just as it used to be mine and Beatrice's. But tonight, I felt I had the right to break that unwritten rule. Everything in the bedroom was neat and impersonal, like a hotel room, not a living room. No pictures, no personal items in plain sight. Delilah always kept things minimalist. I looked around, not really knowing what I was looking for, but feeling like I had to find something. On the bedside table at Delilah's side was a stack of glossy magazines. The top one, Homes with New England History, was open on an article about renovating old estates. Mr. Page's business card from a real estate agent served as a bookmark. In a desk drawer, I found several brochures of private boarding homes for the elderly. One of them, Sunny Hills, was particularly brightly colored in marker, with notes in the margins. I flipped through it. Luxurious rooms, on-site nursing services, organized recreational activities, perfect for seniors who need care and supervision. My heart clenched unpleasantly. So that's what they had planned. Turn me into a nursing home like unwanted furniture and sell the house. I walked back to my room feeling a wave of anger and bitterness rising inside. How could River, my only son, do this to me? Late that night, I heard him come home. Voices in the kitchen, the sound of a bottle of wine being uncorked. I stayed in my room, not wanting to face them early, not having time to calm down and think about the situation. The next morning was overcast but dry. At breakfast, Delilah was unusually friendly, even offering to make me an omelet, a dish I'd always loved, but she'd never bothered to cook for me before. Special day, special breakfast, she murmured at my surprised look. River looked tense, avoiding making eye contact with me. I knew what they were going to say to me, and was sure that nothing good was in store for me at family council tonight. After breakfast, I said I was going to work in the garden. I needed to get out of the house, get some fresh air, gather my thoughts before the inevitable conversation. The roses needed pruning, and the hedge needed shaping. I deliberately busied myself with a bush near the open kitchen window, which gave me a good view of part of the kitchen. Delilah couldn't see me behind the dense foliage, and I could watch her fidgeting while talking on the phone. At first, I could only hear scraps of phrases. She spoke louder and louder as she walked around the kitchen, but then she stopped at the window, and I heard her words clearly. Yes, everything is going according to plan. The old man's house is almost ours. In 3 days, he'll be at Sunny Hills, and we'll start the renovations. No, he's not resisting. We haven't told him yet. Of course, signing the right papers will be the hardest part. Yeah, I got the consent form. River will talk him into it. What? No, we talked about this. 60% of the sale is yours. 40% is ours. After all, we do all the dirty work. I got dizzy. 60% of the sale? To whom? Who did she negotiate with? And the consent form? What exactly was she going to get my consent for? The document of incapacity was almost ready. Dr. Mitchell will sign it. He owes me for the prescription thing. It's all about getting the old man to sign a quitclaim deed. River thinks he can... Yeah, we'll tell you all about it tonight. Don't worry, Vince, I've got it under control. We'll be rich soon. Vince, her brother, who I've only met a couple times. He's a nasty guy with a lot of financial problems. So they're planning a joint scam. Put me in a nursing home, sell my house, split the money. And they need my signature on some paperwork to do it. Delilah finished talking and walked out of the kitchen. I remained standing, clutching the pruning shears so tightly that my fingers turned white. I was seething with rage and resentment. By evening, I had calmed down a bit, at least outwardly. It was time for family council. I purposely dressed in my best sweater, the one Beatrice had given me for the last birthday we'd celebrated together. It seemed important to me to face the betrayal with dignity. River and Delilah were waiting for me in the living room. On the coffee table were glasses and an open bottle of whiskey, my favorite Glenlivet, which I kept for special occasions. They were clearly preparing for a difficult conversation. Dad, River smiled nervously. Sit down. We want to talk about something important. I sat silently in my chair. River poured me a whiskey, more than I usually drink. So, he began, clearing his throat. Delilah and I have been thinking a lot about the situation, about how we'd all be more comfortable with our lives going forward. Go on. I took a small sip. I needed a clear head. We've noticed lately that you've been having more and more trouble with your daily routine. River looked not at me, but somewhere over my shoulder. Forgetfulness, orientation problems. There's nothing wrong with my memory or orientation, I argued calmly. What River means, Delilah interjected with feigned concern in her voice, is that we're worried about your safety. Living alone at your age. I don't live alone, I reminded her. You've both been living here for the last 2.5 years. Yeah, but we can't be around all the time, she continued. River has a job, so do I. And the house is big, so many stairs, so many opportunities to fall or get hurt. The thing is, Dad, River finally decided to meet my gaze. We found a great place that will take better care of you than we can. Sunny Hills is no ordinary nursing home. It's a true resort for seniors, with doctors, nurses, entertainment. And you want to send me there? I was stating a fact, not asking. It's for your own good, River nodded. You'll be safer. What about the house? We'll keep an eye on it, of course. We'll probably make some repairs. You want the house to stay in the family, don't you? How easily she lied. I knew the house was planned to be sold, not kept in the family. And when are you planning for me to move? I tried to keep my voice neutral. Saturday. River looked surprised by my calmness. We've already made all the arrangements. You just need to pack your personal belongings. Saturday. 3 days from now, just like Delilah said on the phone. I take it there's some paperwork to sign? Yeah, a few forms. Delilah pulled a stack of papers out of a folder. Nothing too complicated. Consent for temporary placement, power of attorney to manage financial affairs, the usual formalities. Temporary placement. The usual formalities. How elegantly she's packaged her betrayal in terms that sound good. May I read the documents before signing? I asked. River and Delilah looked at each other. Sure, Dad, River finally said. But there's a lot of legal terms in there. Why don't I just explain the basics to you? I prefer to read for myself, I said firmly. 30 years of working with documents had taught me something. As you wish. Delilah shrugged, but I could see her shoulders tense. I picked up the first document, consent for placement in a long-term care facility. I began to read it carefully. There was no mention of a temporary stay. On the contrary, it stipulated that I was giving up the right to decide my own discharge. The second document was even worse, a power of attorney to manage all my property, including the right to sell the real estate, without the need for additional approvals from me. The third was a waiver of ownership of the house in favor of Rivera, disguised as a gift. Well, I set the papers aside. It's all clear. Will you sign it? River asked hopefully. I gave him a long look. My son, my only child, the one Beatrice and I raised with love, giving him the best we had. And this is how he repaid us. Tell me, River, my voice was quiet but firm. Was it your idea to put me in a nursing home and sell my house? Or was it Delilah and her brother Vince's idea? River flinched, clearly not expecting such a question. Yeah, it's a joint decision, he mumbled. For your own good. How long have you been planning this? What does it matter? Delilah interjected irritably. What matters is that it has to be done now. You can't live alone anymore, and we can't look after you forever. We've been talking about this for months, River admitted quietly. It's a necessary measure, Dad, for all of us. I nodded. Everything was falling into place. Delilah's strange behavior, the constant insinuation that I was forgetful, the isolation from my friends, the visit from the real estate agent. I'm not signing those papers, I said calmly. What? But Dad, this is my house, I stood up. I'm in good health and in my right mind, and I'm not going to let you take over my life and my property. Delilah turned pale with anger. You don't understand. We've already made all the arrangements. River, tell him. Dad, River began pleadingly. Think about it. Sunny Hills is a beautiful place. You'll love it. And we need to move on. This house is too big for us, too old, too... Honey, I interrupted him. It's not your house to decide if it's too big or not. It's the house your mother and I have spent our whole lives building. And I'm not going to sell it. Sell it? River looked genuinely surprised. Who said anything about selling? I looked at Delilah, her face a mask. Ask your wife, I said. Ask her how she plans to split the money from the sale of the house with Vince. 60-40 if I heard right. What a load of crap, Delilah exclaimed, but her voice shook. River, don't listen to him. He's paranoid, and that's more proof that he needs professional help. River looked confused, shifting his gaze from me to his wife and back again. Dad, I don't know where you got this idea from, but we weren't planning on selling the house. Weren't we, Delilah? She smiled strainedly. Of course not, dear. It's all made up by him. I shook my head. Even now, caught red-handed, she kept lying, and River kept believing her. Do as you wish, River, I said tiredly. But I'm not signing those papers, and I'm not going to Sunny Hills. That's my final word. I headed for the door, but stopped when I heard Delilah's cold voice. You're going anyway, Walden, with or without your signature. We have a doctor's report that you're incapacitated. River is your next of kin and can make decisions for you if you're unable to do so yourself. I turned around. River was staring at the floor, avoiding my gaze. Is this true, son? Did you agree to declare me incapacitated? He was silent, and that silence was more eloquent than any words. I returned to my chair, realizing that the situation was more serious than I thought. If they really did have a medical report that I was incapacitated, albeit a fake one, they could act without my consent. Okay, I said slowly. I'll think about it. Give me until tomorrow. Delilah opened her mouth to object, but River stopped her. Sure, Dad. Tomorrow's tomorrow. I went up to my room, closed the door, and sat on the bed. There was no point in resisting directly. They were determined and had trump cards on their hands in the form of a fake medical report. I needed to buy time and come up with another plan. And then I thought of Lydia, her work at the network, how she's good at digging up and publicly exposing other people's dirty secrets. If I can't beat them with force, I'll do it another way. I'll smear them all over town. Let everyone know how Delilah treats the old father-in-law. Let everyone know how my son betrayed his family. Yeah, I'll go to their goddamn nursing home. But first, I'm going to give them a surprise they'll never forget. The next morning, I told Delilah I was going to visit the library, a weekly ritual I'd followed for years. I was surprised that she didn't object. Usually in the last few months, any time I left the house was accompanied by whining about my safety and offers of a ride or escort. Apparently, now that their plan had been revealed, she no longer saw the point in pretending. Just don't take too long. She didn't even look up from the phone. Reaver and I want to go over the details of your move. I nodded, feeling the urge to say something sarcastic, but I held back. Now was not the time for confrontation. I had a plan, and executing it required them to think I'd come to terms with it. Instead of the library, I headed straight for the newsroom of the Amherst Daily. The TV station and newspaper building was located in a modern office center on the edge of town. I'd been here a few times, once for an interview about an investigation into a major forgery case, and then sometimes to visit Lydia. At the reception desk sat a young woman with bright red hair that looked suspiciously like Lydia's, apparently her protege. What can I do for you? She smiled at me with professional affability. I'd like to see Lydia Pratt, I said. My name is Walden Northwood. She should remember me. The girl dialed an extension, and after a minute she said, Mrs. Pratt is expecting you. 3rd floor, office 312. Lydia met me at the elevator. Despite the early morning, she looked as if she'd been in the thick of things for hours. Her hair a little disheveled, a pencil mark on her cheek, a stack of papers in her hands. Walden! She gave me a big hug. What a surprise. I thought I'd see you next week. I shook my head. I'm afraid next week may not be next week, Lydia. I need to have a serious talk with you. When she saw the look on my face, she turned serious and led me into her office, a small, paper-cluttered room with a view of the parking lot and plenty of photographs on the walls. Here was her whole life, pictures from the field, with colleagues, with her family, photos of clippings of her most important reports. Coffee? She offered, but I declined. No time for pleasantries. I sat down in the chair across from her desk. It was worse than we thought. In 15 minutes, I told her everything. Delilah's overheard conversation with her brother, the family council, the documents they'd tried to get me to sign, the threat to use a fake medical report. Lydia listened without interrupting. By the end of my story, her face was as hard as granite. Those two deserve to go to jail, she said through gritted teeth. What they're doing is a felony. Fraud, forging documents, psychologically abusing an elderly person. Maybe, I sighed. But it would be hard to prove it. They have a doctor's report, albeit a dubious one. Besides, River's my son. He may honestly believe he's acting in my best interests. River's a wimp, Lydia cut him off. Always has been. Does what he's told to do. First his mother, now his wife. I cringed. I didn't like hearing that characterization of my son, even though I knew there was some truth to it. River had never been a strong character. Beatrice was overprotective, and I was too busy working to notice it in time. What are you planning to do? Lydia asked. I was thinking, I paused, choosing my words. What if I gave an interview? Tell my story. Show that I'm sane and can make my own decisions. Explain what goes on behind the closed doors of my house. Lydia thought for a moment, tapping her fingers on the table. Public shame is a powerful weapon, she said at last. Especially in a town like Amherst. Everyone knows everyone. Exactly. Delilah values her reputation. She works with medical facilities, representing a pharmaceutical company. Reputation is part of her business. And you're willing to air the family's dirty laundry in public? Lydia looked me carefully in the eye. Think carefully, Walden. It won't just hurt Delilah, it'll hurt Rivera. And you yourself. I nodded. Of course I thought about it. All night long. I'm 72 years old, Lydia. I have no illusions about what people will say or think of me. And River. I hesitated. River made his choice when he decided to betray me. Lydia stared at me for a long moment, as if assessing my resolve. Okay, she said finally. I'll help you. But you need to realize that it's going to be difficult. First, we have to prepare a clear strategy. What exactly you want to say, what evidence you want to provide, and you need to be absolutely sure of what you're saying. I have records of conversations. I took out a notebook from my pocket, where I wrote down everything that happened in the house. I recorded every episode of Delilah's strange behavior, every instance of isolation, every manipulation, with dates and details. That's good, Lydia nodded. But records alone aren't enough. We need other people's testimonies. Has anyone else noticed their strange behavior? Maybe neighbors? Friends of yours? I've been thinking. Mrs. Polanski, the neighbor to my right, had expressed surprise several times that I had stopped going out in the mornings to get the paper. She said Delilah had convinced her that I had health problems, and Pearson, my former co-worker. Delilah canceled our meeting, telling him I was having a bad day. He might have suspected something wrong. Oh, that's great. I'll talk to them. Lydia made a note in her notebook. Now about the interview itself. When do you want to do it? The sooner the better. They're planning to put me in a nursing home on Saturday. That's 2 days from now. Tomorrow, then. Friday night's broadcast is the highest rated. Lydia tapped her pen on her lips thoughtfully. That'll give you a day to prepare, and for me to gather more material. What do I have to do? Right now, go home and pretend you've accepted their decision. Let them think they won. Start packing for the move, where they can see you. It'll put their guard down. And tomorrow? Tomorrow morning, say you're going to say goodbye to the city or something. Be here by 10:00. We'll record the interview, edit it, and air it at 6 in the evening. I nodded. The plan was simple but effective. There's one more thing, Lydia said. You need to undergo an independent medical examination to disprove their conclusion that you are incapacitated. Can that be arranged? More than likely. My sister-in-law works at the city clinic. She's a gerontology specialist and can do standardized cognitive function tests. I'll arrange for her to see you this afternoon. How will I explain my absence from home? Say you went to say goodbye to your friends, Lydia suggested. After all, they've isolated you from everyone you know. It's unlikely they'll check. I smiled. For the first time in weeks, I felt in control, that I had a plan and allies. When I got home, Delilah was sitting in the kitchen, leafing through a glossy magazine. She raised her head and looked at me questioningly. Went to the library, I said, trying to sound tired and defeated. Checked out the books. I said goodbye to Mrs. Conroy, the librarian. Oh, she was clearly not expecting this submission. That's, good. I've been thinking about last night, I continued, my eyes downcast. Maybe you're right. Maybe I really would be better off under supervision. I've been feeling not so confident lately. Her eyes lit up with triumph, but she quickly hid that expression under a mask of concern. I'm so glad you understand, Walden. We do want what's best, don't we? I know, I nodded. I'll start packing today. Just, can I go say goodbye to a few friends? After lunch? Sure. She was too pleased with my surrender to object. Just don't get too tired. You need to conserve your energy. After lunch, I really started packing, neatly putting books in boxes, sorting clothes, packing photos. River walked in on me as I was wrapping a picture of Beatrice in paper. Dad, he stood in the doorway, shuffling awkwardly from foot to foot. You're really not mad? I looked at him for a long moment. You know, son, I said slowly, when you were 6 years old, you broke my favorite model ship. I'd been building it for 3 months. You were afraid to admit it, so you blamed it on the cat. I knew it was you. We didn't even have a cat. But I didn't punish you. Do you know why? River shook his head. Because I've seen you agonize over your lies. The shame that gnaws at you from the inside out. And I thought this lesson would be more valuable than any punishment. I carefully placed the wrapped photograph in the box. I hope, River, that someday you'll feel that shame again and learn a lesson from it. He opened his mouth to say something, but changed his mind and silently left the room. In the afternoon, I went to the clinic where Lydia's sister-in-law, Dr. Helen Morrow, administered standard cognitive function tests. As expected, my results were normal for someone my age. No signs of dementia or other pathology that might compromise my decision-making ability. I don't know what kind of doctor signed off on your incapacity, Dr. Morrow said as she reviewed the results, but he should have his license revoked. Your cognitive functions are at the level of a 60-year-old. I grinned. I suppose that's a compliment at my age. It is, she smiled. I'll prepare a formal report and give it to Lydia tonight. You'll have it tomorrow before the interview. That evening I continued packing. It was a strange thing, packing my life into boxes, not knowing for sure if I would unpack them again in this house. Each thing evoked a memory. Here was the toolkit I used to build a swing for little Rivera. Here was the scarf Beatrice knitted me for my 50th birthday. Here was a stack of letters from parents long gone. I decided to take with me the minimum, only the essentials and the most valuable things. The rest, I thought, could be picked up later, when the situation was resolved, one way or another. At dinner, Delilah was unusually kind, even preparing my favorite dish, baked trout with lemon and rosemary. Especially for you, she cooed. I thought we should have a nice celebration of your last dinner at home, last supper, like a condemned man on death row. I restrained myself from saying the thought out loud. Instead, I thanked and ate quietly, pretending to enjoy my meal. I'm almost done with my things, I said after dinner. There are a few books and my notebooks left to pack. Oh, don't worry about that, Delilah said. We can bring anything you forget later. Sunny Hills doesn't have a lot of room, so it's best to take only the essentials. Of course. Why waste precious space in a luxury nursing home on my old stuff, which will be thrown away as soon as I step over the threshold of the facility anyway? That evening, just as I was about to go to bed, River walked in on me. Dad, he stood in the doorway, awkwardly tugging at the edge of his t-shirt, a gesture from his childhood. I wanted to tell you, it's going to be okay. Sunny Hills really is a great place. I checked. And we'll visit you every week. Every week. A big-hearted promise for a son who was about to put his father in a nursing home. Of course, son. I smiled the fakest smile I could muster. I know you and Delilah only want what's best for me. He glowered, not catching the irony, or chose not to see it. Thanks, Dad. It means a lot to me. When he left, I closed the door and sat down at the table. I needed to prepare for the interview tomorrow. I pulled out a piece of paper and started jotting down the key points I wanted to cover. A timeline of events, specific examples of manipulation, an overheard conversation about selling a house. I didn't want to appear unprepared or emotional. My story had to sound convincing, clear, and unemotional. I worked on the interview plan until well into the night. By the time I finished, it was past midnight. As I lay in bed, I looked at the photograph of Beatrice, not yet boxed up. Would you approve of my plan B? I whispered into the darkness. Or would you say I was too cruel? Of course, there was no answer. But I knew Beatrice. She had always valued honesty and fairness above all else. She would have understood. As I fell asleep, I thought about what awaited me tomorrow. About Rivera and Delilah's reaction when they saw the interview. The possible repercussions. About life in the nursing home. Because even after their plans were exposed, I'd probably still move there. But no matter what happened, I knew one thing. I wouldn't let them get away with it. I wasn't going to let Delilah and her brother profit off my house. I would not let them rob me of my dignity under the pretense of caring. Let me spend the rest of my days in Sunny Hills, but I will do it on my terms, and with the satisfaction that the truth is known to all. Friday morning, I woke up earlier than usual. It was just starting to get light outside my window, and I was already fully dressed and ready to go out. I had chosen my best suit, the dark blue one I wore when I married Beatrice, and which I wore only on special occasions. It was a little looser than before, but it still fit decently. A pinstripe tie, white shirt, polished shoes. I wanted to look collected, personable, dignified. The opposite of the helpless old man Delilah had worked so hard to mold. At breakfast, I told her I wanted to walk around the city, to say goodbye to the places where my life had been. Don't get too tired, Delilah cooed. Today's a big day, and I need to save my strength for the move tomorrow. I nodded with fake gratitude and left the house. It was a clear, sunny day, perfect for dotting the I's and T's once and for all. I arrived at the newsroom at 10 sharp. Lydia was already waiting for me in the lobby, visibly nervous. "Is everything all right?" I asked, noticing her condition. "More than okay," she nodded quickly. "Just a little nervous. It's going to be a bomb, Walden. We go live at 6 o'clock tonight." "Live?" I was surprised. "I thought we were taping the interview beforehand." "Change of plans." Lydia tugged on my sleeve, pulling me toward the elevators. "Our editor-in-chief, Harrison, has read the summary of your story I prepared. He's furious. His own mother was tricked into signing a deed of gift on an apartment years ago. It's personal to him. He wants to give this story maximum exposure, and Live TV is always an event." I swallowed. It's one thing to have a recorded interview that can be edited if I say something wrong. It's quite another to go live, where every reservation, every hiccup would be visible to everyone. Lydia noticed my anxiety. "Don't worry," she said softly. "You're going to be great. You have all the information you need. You know what to talk about. Plus, I'll be around to ask leading questions, and we'll rehearse." In the studio, I was met by Harrison Cowell himself, a heavy man in his 60s with a piercing gaze and a commanding manner. "Mr. Northwood," he shook my hand firmly. "It's a pleasure to meet you. Lydia's told me a lot about you. I want you to know that what your son and his wife are doing is disgusting, and we're going to help you get the truth out." I thanked him, feeling a strange mixture of relief and anxiety. This was all becoming very real. We spent the next few hours preparing. Lydia showed me around the studio, explained how the interview would go, where to look, how to sit. We had 2 full rehearsals, practicing key points of the story. She asked me questions, sometimes simple, sometimes tricky, and I answered, trying to be clear and to the point. By lunchtime, I was feeling squeezed but confident that I was ready. "You're doing great," Lydia encouraged me during a break. "Just remember, talk calmly, do not show too much emotion. Let the facts speak for themselves." After lunch, which we ate right in the studio, appeared makeup artist, a young woman with deft hands who quickly made me television makeup. "It's just to take the shine off your skin under the spotlights," she explained, seeing my embarrassment. "Everyone goes through it, even presidents." An hour before the broadcast, an expert came to the studio, Dr. Edward Kane, a well-known psychiatrist in the city, specializing in the problems of the elderly. "Dr. Kane agreed to comment after your interview," Lydia explained, "about how common these situations are and how to recognize manipulation aimed at the elderly. It will add weight to your story." I nodded, feeling the tension rising inside me. It was less than an hour until the broadcast. "What if they see the announcement?" I suddenly asked. "Delilah or River? They might try to interfere." "Don't worry," Lydia grinned. "Our announcements never reveal the whole story. They'll just say something like, 'Tonight at 6 o'clock, an exclusive interview with former forensics expert Walden Northwood about a shocking family drama.' No details." That calmed me down a bit, though my heart was still beating more often than usual. At 5:30, we took our seats in the studio. I sat across from Lydia in a comfortable high-backed chair. The cameramen were bustling around, adjusting the lights and cameras. "Remember," Lydia reminded me one last time, "you're not doing this just for yourself. Your story can help other seniors who find themselves in a similar situation but don't have your courage to confront." I nodded. She was right. It gave me strength. At exactly 6 o'clock in the evening, the red lights on the cameras came on. There was no turning back. "Good evening, Amherst," Lydia began, looking directly into the camera. "This is Lydia Pratt and the evening news. We have an unusual guest in the studio tonight, Walden Northwood, a former forensics expert for our police department who worked for over 30 years in the counterfeiting unit. Many of you know Walden as a respected member of our community, a devoted husband to the late Beatrice Northwood, a father and grandfather. But Walden doesn't come to us today with good news. He has a story to tell about betrayal in his own family, a story that is sadly becoming more and more common in our community. Walden, thank you for having the courage to come today." I took a deep breath. "Thank you for giving me the opportunity to tell my story, Lydia. So Walden, what brings you to our studio today?" "I want to tell you about a situation I've been dealing with for the past few months," I began in a steady voice. "After my wife Beatrice died 4 years ago, my son River and his wife Delilah moved into my house. Things were fine at first, but gradually things changed. It started small, rearranging things, limiting my autonomy, taking care of my health. But over time I realized that something more serious was going on. a systematic campaign to isolate me from friends and acquaintances, to create the image of a helpless old man, unable to make decisions for myself. I spoke slowly, clearly, trying not to stumble or show too much emotion. I told about how Delilah took my car keys, how she intercepted my mail, how she canceled meetings with friends on the pretext of my not feeling well, how she spread stories to neighbors about my budding dementia. Lydia asked leading questions to help me structure my story, emphasizing the most important points. "Where did it all lead?" she asked when I had finished describing the months of manipulation. 3 days ago, I overheard Delilah on the phone. I paused, remembering the exact words. She was telling her brother Vincent, "The old man's house is almost ours. He'll be at Sunny Hills in 3 days, and we'll start the renovations." Sunny Hills is a private boarding house for the elderly in a neighboring county. They were planning to send me there tomorrow, Saturday. "Did you confront them with this information?" "Yes, that very evening. They held what they called a family council, where they informed me of their plans. Of course, they presented it as being concerned for my welfare, but the real motives were obvious: to get rid of me and gain control of my house. I told them about the documents they were trying to get me to sign, a waiver of my right to decide my own discharge from the boarding house, a power of attorney to manage my estate, the actual transfer of the house to River. When I refused to sign, I continued, Delilah said it didn't matter. They supposedly had a report from a Dr. Mitchell that I was incapacitated, and River, as next of kin, could make decisions for me. "Did you get an independent medical evaluation?" Lydia asked. "Yes, yesterday." I took out of my pocket the report Dr. Morrow handed me. Dr. Helen Morrow of the Amherst City Hospital had performed standard cognitive function tests. She concluded that my cognitive abilities are completely normal for someone my age, and in some respects even superior. "Those are serious allegations, Walden." Lydia looked me straight in the eye. "You realize you're telling this on live television, and your son, his wife, their acquaintances. Everyone can see it?" "I do," I nodded. "And it's a conscious decision. I don't want other seniors to face this kind of treatment from those they trust the most. It's pure betrayal." For the first time in the entire interview, my voice shook, and I paused to pull myself together. "Walden," Lydia said softly, "what would you like to say to those watching this interview right now? To your son, your daughter-in-law, your neighbors, your friends?" I gathered my thoughts. "I would like to say that old age is not a crime or a disease. We older adults deserve respect and dignity. We deserve the right to make our own decisions about our lives, even if those decisions are not to the liking of our children or grandchildren." I looked directly into the camera. "To Rivera, I want to say, I have always loved you and always will, despite your choices. But I am deeply disappointed in how easily you allowed yourself to be manipulated, how quickly you betrayed your mother's memory and your father's trust. To Delilah and Vincent, I want you to know that your plans have been discovered. You will not succeed in stealing my home and my dignity. And to everyone in Amherst, thank you for all the support you've given me over the years. I appreciate each and every one of you." There was silence. I saw tears glisten in Lydia's eyes, but she quickly got over her emotions. "Thank you for your candor, Walden," she said. "We'll now bring in Dr. Edward Kane, a gerontopsychiatrist, psychiatrist, to discuss how common these situations are and how they can be prevented." As Dr. Kane entered the studio, I took a breath. The hardest part was over. I had said everything I wanted to say, and now all I had to do was wait for a reaction. Dr. Kane spoke for about 10 minutes about how often seniors are victims of financial and psychological abuse by relatives, how to recognize manipulation to isolate and create an image of incapacity, and where to go for help. He mentioned a recent study that 1 in 6 people over the age of 65 experience some form of abuse. At the end of the program, Lydia made an announcement. "If you or a loved one is facing a situation similar to the one Walden Northwood described, don't stay silent. Contact Hampshire County Elder Protective Services at the number you see on the screen. Elder abuse is a crime, and it should not go unpunished." This is the end of the program. As soon as the red lights on the cameras went off, several of the station's staff came up to me to shake my hand and show their support. "You were great," Lydia said, hugging me. "Calm, dignified, persuasive, exactly as I've known you all these years." "Thank you." I felt strangely light, as if a huge weight had fallen from my shoulders. "What now?" "Now," she glanced at her watch, "I would suggest waiting here for a while, to give time for a first reaction." We moved to the break room, where Lydia made tea. Dr. Kane joined us and we discussed some of the details of legislation to protect the rights of the elderly. Not half an hour later, Lydia's phone started ringing. "It's Anne, my neighbor," she said, glancing at the screen. "She's friends with your neighbor, Mrs. Polanski." She answered the call by putting it on speakerphone. "Lydia, you're not going to believe this," Anne's excitedly chattering. "The whole neighborhood is talking about Old Man Northwood's interview." Grace Polanski nearly fainted when she heard Delilah telling everyone he had dementia. She says she always thought he had a sharper mind than most people half his age. And Tom Burke, the mailman, called now, says he's seen Delilah intercept Walden's mail several times, and he thought it was strange. I listened, amazed at the speed with which news was spreading in Little Amherst. "What about River and Delilah?" Lydia asked. "Had anyone seen them?" "Not yet," replied Anne. "But Joe at the supermarket says he saw them go by in a car like they were being chased by devils. Looked like they'd seen a ghost. They must have started making phone calls by now." When Anne hung up, Lydia turned to me. "Ready to go home? I think you're in for an interesting evening." I nodded. I was prepared for the consequences of my performance, whatever the outcome. Lydia volunteered to give me a ride. We didn't talk much on the way. We were each absorbed in our own thoughts. Only when we reached my house did she put her hand on my shoulder. "Whatever happens next, know that you did the right thing. Your story is already helping others." I nodded, grateful for the encouragement. Rivera's car was in the driveway. They were already back. I took a deep breath and got out of Lydia's car. She waited until I reached the door, waved goodbye, and drove away. I unlocked the door with my key and walked into the house. There were loud voices coming from the living room. River and Delilah were clearly in the middle of a heated argument. At the sound of my footsteps, they fell abruptly silent. The living room was chaotic, with a broken flower pot on the floor and a mess of clothes on the couch, as if they'd been hastily pulled out of the closet. Delilah stood at the window, clutching the phone so tightly in her hand that her knuckles were white. River sat on the couch with his head resting on his hands. At my appearance, Delilah turned sharply. Her face, usually carefully controlled, contorted with rage. "You!" she hissed. "How dare you? Do you realize what you've done?" I walked calmly into the room and sat down in my chair. "I suppose you've been watching the news," I said. "Did you?" She was practically screaming. "The whole damn Amherst was watching. I've already gotten calls from the office, the church, even the damn book club. My phone won't stop ringing. You've destroyed my reputation." River raised his head. His eyes were red, like he'd been crying. "Why, Dad?" he asked quietly. "Why did you have to take it public? Was there any other way to stop you?" I answered calmly. "You said yourself that you got a medical report that I was incapacitated. You were planning to send me to Sunny Hills with or without papers. What was I supposed to do?" "We meant well," River exclaimed. "Better for who?" I looked him straight in the eye. "For me? Or for Delilah and her brother, who were planning to split the money from the sale of my house?" River shifted his gaze from me to his wife in confusion. "What? What is he talking about, Delilah?" She twitched, but quickly pulled herself together. "Don't listen to him. It's all in his head, his paranoia. You can see he's not himself." "I heard your conversation with Vincent," I said firmly. 3 days ago, when you thought I was in the garden. 60% of the sale is yours, 40% is ours. After all, we do all the dirty work." River rose slowly to his feet, his face pale. "Is it true?" he asked, turning to Delilah. "Were you planning to sell the house?" "Of course not," she said indignantly, but her voice sounded false even to my ears. "I told you we were talking to Vince about possible renovations. Your father got it all wrong." At that moment, the doorbell rang. We all froze, looking toward the hallway. "If it's the press," Delilah hissed. "I swear I'll—" River went to open it. A minute later, Mrs. Polanski, our neighbor on the right, entered the living room, a stern lady in her 70s with perfect posture and a penetrating gaze. "Walden," she came over to me and hugged me tightly. "I just saw the news. I couldn't believe my ears. I came to make sure you were okay." "Thank you, Grace." I was touched by her concern. "I'm fine." She turned to Delilah and her gaze turned icy. "But you, young lady, are far from fine. How can you not be ashamed? Telling everyone that Walden has dementia. Walden, who does the New York Times crossword puzzle every morning faster than my professor's son." Delilah opened her mouth to object, but at that moment the phone rang again. This time it was the house phone. River picked it up, listened for a few seconds, then silently handed it to me. "Walden, it's Pearson," I heard the voice of my former colleague. "I just saw you on the news. I wanted to tell you how much I admire your courage. I'm sorry I believed Delilah when she said you were having a bad day. I should have checked it out for myself. It's okay, Pearson. I was glad to hear his voice. It's okay. As I hung up, the phone rang again, and again, and again. Each call was from someone who had seen my interview and wanted to express support. Former colleagues, friends from book club, even the principal of a local school with whom we once worked together on a guidance program. Delilah stood in the corner of the room, her face growing paler with each new call. River looked at her, and understanding slowly grew in his eyes. You were really planning to sell the house, he finally said, and it wasn't a question but a statement. She didn't answer, but her silence was more eloquent than any words. I stared at them both, feeling strangely calm. Whatever happened next, I knew. The truth had finally come out. And judging by the reaction of the whole of Amherst, I wasn't alone in my confrontation. The next few days passed like a blur. After my interview, the phone wouldn't stop ringing. It seemed like all of Amherst wanted to show me support, or just to make sure I was okay. Delilah moved out that same night, packed up and left for her brother's without even saying goodbye. River stayed, but the atmosphere between us was strained, awkward. We avoided looking each other in the eye, talking only about the essentials. On Saturday morning, the day I was to move to Sunny Hills, the lawyer Jeffrey Oakes, an old friend of Lydia's, came to see me. She had insisted on this meeting, and now I realized how important it was. Mr. Northwood, Oakes said, settling into my living room. I saw your interview. It's an impressive story, and unfortunately quite typical. I specialize in protecting the rights of the elderly, and believe me, you're not alone in your situation. I nodded. After the interview, I received several letters from other elderly Amherst residents who had experienced similar attitudes from relatives. These stories were heartbreaking. I'm here to help you deal with the legal side of this, Oakes continued. First of all, this is a false medical report that you're incapacitated. We can file a complaint against Dr. Mitchell with the medical board. Second, attempting to gain control of your assets through fraud. This is more serious with both civil and criminal consequences. I don't want any lawsuits, I shook my head. Especially not against Rivera. He's my son, no matter what. I understand, Oakes nodded. Then perhaps you'd like to review your estate matters? Will, powers of attorney, disposition of the house, I wondered. Here it was, the key point. The house Delilah had fought so hard for. Actually, I said slowly, I still plan to move to Sunny Hills. Oakes raised his eyebrows in surprise. After everything that's happened? It was my decision all along, I replied. I don't mind living in a nursing home. I'm against being sent there against my will, being cheated out of my property. Oakes nodded thoughtfully. What do you plan to do with the house? Sell it, I said firmly. But not to River, and certainly not to Delilah. We talked for another hour or so, going over the details. Oakes helped me come up with a clear plan of action. I would contact a real estate agent, put the house on the market, and put the proceeds into my account so I could live comfortably in Sunny Hills. No deed of gift, no power of attorney for Rivera or Delilah. I'll prepare a new will, Oakes said before leaving, according to your wishes. And I'll go through all the paperwork involved in selling the house and moving to the boarding house. No one will be able to manipulate them this time. After he left, I felt much more confident. I was now in control of the situation. I was doing the same thing Delilah and River had planned, but on my own terms. Toward evening, I heard footsteps on the stairs, and there was a knock on the door of my room. River stood on the doorstep, pale and drained. Dad, he looked like he hadn't slept in days. Can I talk to you for a second? I nodded silently, letting him into the room. Delilah's gone to Boston, he said, sinking heavily into the chair by the window. To see her parents. I think we're getting a divorce. I felt no satisfaction at the news, only fatigue. I'm sorry, I said sincerely. You are? I could hear the surprise in his voice. After everything she'd done? Divorce is always a sad event, I replied, even if the marriage wasn't a happy one. We were sitting in the room, the same room where I'd taken a break from work and where I'd been forced to squat after they'd moved in. I didn't know, River said quietly. I swear, Dad, I didn't know about the plans to sell the house. She said we were going to live here, take care of you, just from a different place. I looked at him carefully, trying to figure out if he was telling the truth. Perhaps he really didn't know all the details of his wife's plan, or maybe he preferred not to know. I believe you, I finally said. But that doesn't change the fact that you agreed to declare me incompetent on the basis of a forged medical report. You were willing to put me in a nursing home against my will. River lowered his head. I believed it was for your own good. Delilah said you were becoming forgetful, dangerous to yourself, that you'd be better off at Sunny Hills, safer. And you never once questioned it? Didn't think to ask an independent doctor's opinion? Or at least scrutinize me for yourself? I was wrong, Dad. Rivera's voice trembled. I made a terrible mistake, and I don't know how to fix it. I sighed. My son, my flesh and blood, despite all the pain and disappointment, I couldn't completely cut him out of my heart. I'm still moving to Sunny Hills, I said, watching his eyes widen in surprise. But on my terms. The house will be sold, but not to you or Delilah. The money will go towards securing my living there. But why? After everything that's happened? Because it's my decision, I said firmly. This house is too big for me alone. It holds too many memories, both good and bad. And Sunny Hills, according to their brochures, has good facilities, medical care, and the opportunity to socialize with people my age and interests. River looked shocked. I could stay with you, help out, he offered tentatively. No, I shook my head. You need to get your own life together, River. Sort out your marriage, your job, your future, and I need space. I'm not saying we won't communicate, but right now we both need distance. We talked for another hour or so. River told me that Delilah had been fired from the pharmaceutical company. They couldn't afford to have someone with such a scandalous reputation on their staff. Her brother Vincent had also come under fire for criticism. It turned out he'd had trouble with the law in the past, and the story came to light after the interview. The church committee is seriously discussing expelling Delilah, Rivera said, and Mrs. Polanski has organized something of an unofficial boycott. None of the neighbors are talking to her. I didn't feel any gloating, just sadness that things had gotten to this point. A week after the interview, I officially put the house on the market through Amherst Home Agency, a competitor of Amherst Premium, with whom Delilah had worked. My agent was Susan Collins, an energetic middle-aged woman with a sharp mind and an excellent reputation in town. Given the state of the market and the location of the house, we can expect about $650,000, she said after the inspection. Maybe even more, if there's competition among the buyers. I nodded. That was more than enough to ensure my comfortable living in Sunny Hills for many years to come. To my surprise, the house sold in 3 weeks, to a young family from Boston moving to Amherst because of the husband's new job at a local college. They had 2 children, a boy and a girl, and fell in love with the house at first sight. This nursery will be perfect for our youngest, the woman said, looking around the room where Beatrice and I were once supposed to sleep our second child, the one that never came into the world. I smiled. Perhaps this was a sign. New life for the house that meant so much to me. On the day I moved into Sunny Hills, a few friends saw me off. Lydia, of course, Pearson, Mrs. Polanski, a couple of other neighbors. River came too, though he kept a little aloof. Are you sure you want to do this? Lydia asked me one last time as we stood on the porch of the house I'd lived in for almost 40 years. Sure, I looked back at the house, mentally saying goodbye to all the memories it held. It was time to move on. Sunny Hills turned out to be exactly as promised in the brochure. Well-maintained grounds, modern building, spacious rooms, medical staff on site. My room was on the second floor, overlooking a small lake and a wooded hill in the distance. The first few days were strange. New place, new faces, new routines. But gradually I began to get used to it. And then, to my own surprise, I found that I liked life here. Sunny Hills had an excellent library, a chess club, even a small workshop where I could do carpentry, a hobby I had abandoned after Beatrice's death. I became fast friends with several of the residents, especially Arthur Kingsley, a former university professor with whom we spent hours discussing books and politics. River visited me every week as promised. Our relationship was slowly but surely recovering. He told me he'd filed for divorce, found a new job in Northampton, and rented a small apartment there. I listened, supported, but kept an emotional distance. The wound of betrayal healed, but the scar remained. 3 months after moving in, I met Eleanor Bright, a new resident of Sunny Hills, the widow of a prominent Amherst architect. She was 69 and radiated a vitality that instantly attracted me. We started going for walks around the lake together, eating at the same table, attending the classical music concerts that were sometimes held in the lobby. You know, Walden, she said one day as we sat on a bench by the lake, I never thought it was possible to start life over at my age. But here with you, that's exactly what I feel. I took her hand in mine, marveling at how easy it was for me to be with her. Me too, Ellie, me too. 6 months later, my life had changed beyond recognition. 3 times a week, I ran a forensics class for the local youth. Lydia had helped organize it through the school board. Every Tuesday, Eleanor and I went to a local restaurant for a date. She insisted that at our age, it was especially important not to forget the romance. On Thursdays, I played chess with Arthur and a few other Hill residents. And on weekends, I often saw Rivera, sometimes at the boarding house, sometimes in town. Delilah left Amherst shortly after the divorce. Rumors said she moved to California, where she found a job with another pharmaceutical company. Her reputation in Amherst was hopelessly tarnished. No one wanted to do business with a woman who tried to cheat her elderly father-in-law out of his home. One evening, I sat on the terrace of Sunny Hills with Eleanor, watching the sun set behind the trees. On the table between us were 2 cups of tea and a plate of cookies she had baked during the day. "What are you thinking about?" Eleanor asked, noticing my distant look. "About life," I answered. "About how strangely it turns. 6 months ago, they tried to send me here by force, depriving me of everything. And now I'm here of my own free will, with the money from the sale of my house in my account, doing what I like, with people I care about." Eleanor smiled and took my hand. "You know what I always told my kids? Life isn't what happens to you. It's what you do with what happens." I nodded, squeezing her palm. Wise words. I slept peacefully that night, without the disturbing dreams that sometimes still haunted me. In my room, on my bedside table, were 2 pictures. Beatrice on the coast of Maine, gray hair fluttering in the wind, and a new one of me, Eleanor, River, and Lydia, at a recent picnic by the lake, past and present, pain and joy, everything that makes life complete.